Okay, my talk. Creativity, or how I learned to stop worrying and love Miley Cyrus. Hence the hat, which is really a reference to her father. I don't know what kind of headgear she wears. Creativity, 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 creativity. This word is kind of awful. Like, people use it all the time for all kinds of things, and it's not always useful. I mean, if you look, there's people that call themselves creative directors, and they work at places like Infinity Ward and make games like Call of Duty. And if you've played that, you'll know that they didn't put any of this into it. So it's kind of this weird word, and I want to just define it. So, like, I'm not talking about a lot of things. I'm not talking about macaroni pictures for your mom, really, or sort of. But I'm not talking about doodling or a cappella humming. I'm talking about problem solving with novel solutions, because we're all game developers, or we want to be game developers, or we just love games and interested in it. So we have problems because games are hard to make, and we want novel solutions. So, creativity is good, but really, that's not really a great statement. But a novel idea can help make a game more appealing by the game is different to a conventional idea. And more than that, working on games where there are creative ideas in it is better, because that's going to produce games where there are interesting challenges and opportunities for self-expression. I think Peter did a great talk where outlined some of the things that motivate us, and a lot of it is around kind of being able to put yourself into it and control your process, which they call autonomy. And then there's also you want a challenge. So if you choose the conventional route every time, it's going to be a solved space, and you're not going to be putting any of yourself into it, and you're not going to feel great. So we want to be motivated, and we want to make good games. This is maybe not new news, but I think it's worth saying. Creativity can be learned. This has been proven plenty of times. Students at Buffalo University went through creative courses, and afterwards they had a control group, and they tested them for their creative cognition, and there was a lasting improvement in the students who went through the creative courses, their creative cognition. So you can learn it, and you can exercise it like a muscle. So just to mention, some people are born with genes that naturally make them a bit more inclined to have a better potential creativity, but that doesn't really matter, because recent studies also showed that people who have already creative often have mental disorders. So genes aren't that great. Don't worry about what people say about them. Also, creative people tend to be less honest, which I thought was really weird. I wouldn't lie to you. Because you can make up convincing lies, and a lot of other things that factor into being creative actually help you lie really well. So I kind of want to say, with great power comes great responsibility, and use the advice I'm going to give you wisely and for the betterment of mankind. As adults, we can empower ourselves to be more creative people and structure our environments to enable creativity. This is kind of what I was saying on the forums. I want to talk about habits that we can adopt that can help us harness our creativity and make better games. And also, sometimes you need to stifle creativity. You can't be kind of coming up with crazy ideas all the time. It's not particularly productive. But in any case, how do we maximize our creativity without harming other things, I guess? Just before I talk about habits, this is a thing in creative discourse which they call divergent and convergent thinking. I think it's kind of interesting. When you're doing divergent thinking, you're talking about the ability to generate many varied and original options. So you're sitting there coming up with ideas. Convergent thinking is the selection and development of the most promising options. So it's converging towards a purpose or a goal. And we can engage in both of these. Divergent thinking is unique to Homo sapiens. There were dudes before Homo sapiens, guys called Homo habilis, or Homo habilis. They had for 1.5 million years, they had this tool that they made, which they could break nuts open. It was like a little flake of rock. And it took them then they invented a hand axe thing, which is a stone in their palm, and they had that for 600,000 years. Then Homo sapiens came along, and in like 40,000 years we had like houses and cave paintings and throwing weapons and cellular phones, and like we're kind of awesome. Convergent thinking comes a lot easier to us. And I'm just going to read this quote. Most educational efforts emphasize convergent thinking and may do little if anything for creative potential. Mark Runco, 2007. This is basically because it's easy to mark people when they're doing something convergent, when there's a single correct option. So a lot of what we're taught at school and possibly in universities is that to get the right answer, to succeed, you hone the skill, which is like finding the right answer, and that's not useful in being better at creativity. I think computer science courses also kind of do this. They kind of probably have to some extent, but so I'm guessing. I guess a lot of you guys, the creative stuff might be useful to you. I guess I'm not saying you're not creative, but your schools have let you down. Too much convergent thinking or premature convergent thinking can be a problem in terms of creativity, but conversely, too much divergent thinking and the stuff that goes along with that, too many ideas and too little focus can lead to poor productivity. Now, this wonderful person by the name of John Cleese talked about this, and some of you guys know this info already, but I think it's super, super useful. John Cleese being one of the main guys in Monty Python, and Monty Python being a troupe that produced some of the most creative television jokes and everything that I guess I would say anyone's ever produced. So he knows his stuff, and also he's coming from a position of being kind of almost too creative, which is like kind of an awesome perspective to have, because a lot of scientists look at it and go, creativity, it's in the genes, and Miley Cyrus. And so he talks about open mode and closed mode. Open mode, the open mode is more relaxed, more receptive, more exploratory, more democratic, more playful, and more humorous. So people getting around, or you by yourself, just coming up with ideas, having fun, none of it's wrong. You're not kind of disagreeing about things, and you're not kind of trying to figure out what's right for the purpose of this thing. You're rather just brainstorming and trying to come up with as much value as you can in that. The closed mode is the tighter, more rigid, more hierarchical, more tunnel visioned mode, which sounds absolutely awful, but it's kind of necessary and a good thing when you're kind of getting down to work and you want to be motivated, you want to be productive. You kind of want that point list of the things that you should do, and you're just going to do those things, and that's going to work out. And you need that for motivation. When you're in the open mode, you're being playful and not so serious. And actually, as great as it is, you're not necessarily going to get that much done. We kind of have that problem a little bit at Free Lives. We're trying to fix it. So Cleese suggests 5 factors that we can maximize in order to work in the open mode, get the most out of it, and to also he suggests some things to separate the two modes so you can go from one to the other and get the most done and get the best stuff done. So the first thing he suggests is space. Cleese says that we can't become playful and therefore creative if we're under our usual pressures. We have to create a space for ourselves away from those demands where we will not be disturbed. And I don't know if any of you guys experience this, but I know when I've got a big problematic problem, it's an unknown, and I have to solve it, and I think it's going to take a couple hours, but I've got to go do something that important, in an hour's time. It's very hard to get into that and actually do it. I need to have that space. I need to be away from my emails and all the things that could interrupt the flow of thought. At the same time, it's not just enough to create spaces. We have to create a space for a specific period of time. So you want to be somewhere where you can, this is to get into the open mode and be creative. You want to be somewhere where you can focus just on doing that and not be interrupted. And importantly, at the end of that time, committing to actually doing normal life or getting into the open mode and getting something done, as opposed to waffling the whole day away. Please suggest an hour and a half of this oasis of quiet is good, and 30 minutes to quieten down, and an hour of work if you're lucky. So the idea being you're just focusing on this one problem and seeing what you can come up with and not being interrupted, and also allowing yourself time to kind of start forgetting about those other things that were bugging you. And that's kind of a hard thing to do. I know I struggle to get really down into work, and you can feel yourself when you're hitting that place where you aren't thinking about anything else and you've really got that focus. So the other factor is also time. And he says that the longer we stay with a creative problem, the more original our output would be. And that's the novel ideas thing. What he's also saying here is not necessarily that we are spending all that time actively working on it. He's also saying that if you sleep on it, you might, and I don't know if anyone's experienced this, but you go to bed and then you wake up and the solution to it's a lot easier to get at all of a sudden, or maybe just a day later you're wondering why you had such a problem before because the answer has come to you. So there's in fact, when you spend a lot of time with a problem, you're giving your subconscious, the other parts of your brain besides the bits that you're actively conscious of, time to work through it. And they're hopefully doing that. If you're carrying this problem with you, hopefully they're doing it in the background as you go along. And that's awesome. It's like free ideas. So he also suggests, though, that being decisive is the opposite of being creative. 5 minutes. 10. That's excellent. That's kind of, I don't know if it happened, well, it doesn't happen much at Free Lives because we're not very decisive, but I can imagine people being really decisive. At the start of like a problem, there's kind of, we need a new kind of enemy that does something, and then we will solve this, we'll write it down, and we'll start working on it. And that kind of urge comes from wanting to have this problem solved. There's a discomfort when it's an unsolved space still. And that's not necessarily, well, I think Cleese uses the word courageous. It's not the bravest way to go about this because you're trying to spare yourself that discomfort, but by doing so, you're limiting your chances at producing a more original idea. And so he suggests that whenever we need to make a decision, we should ask ourselves, when does this decision have to be taken? When do we have to commit to that? Rather defer the decision until later in order to maximize your pondering time. That doesn't necessarily, in terms of game development, that doesn't necessarily mean don't do it now, maybe come back to it, because a lot of the time we can have ideas and really not know if they're any good or not. Really what this can mean in game development is maybe come up with some ideas and start prototyping, and through that process you might find the answer. You might find a better answer or a better solution, but you're not going to, if you commit to it and you know, this is what it's going to be and all these other things are not going to rely on that, and we're now definitely doing this, then you've missed out all that opportunity. You've got to, it's better if you have the opportunity to make the decision later, rather do. But don't procrastinate. That's not what I'm saying. Confidence. This is a weird one that he brings up. Cleese says that nothing stops us being creative more than a fear of making a mistake. And it's a bit counterintuitive that you need confidence in order to come up with ideas. But it's not just coming up with ideas, especially if you're in a team. It's saying those ideas out loud. It's not being afraid, I guess. Even by yourself. If you're afraid of making a mistake, you're going to have this crippling thing and you won't be able to explore anything in your mind. The essence of playfulness is an openness to anything that may happen and the feeling that whatever happens, it's okay. That will free you up to make bad decisions, and you can make lots of them because it's way better than sitting and making no decisions. Also, recent studies have shown that highly creative people tend to be assholes. Sorry? They're dishonest and they're assholes because they've got this, they've got like a predisposition to being confident, and also a lot of them, or to some, they can have a highly creative person might be aggressive. That might be part of why they're able to exercise this creativity. So they will be assholes because that's what people do in that situation. Also, confidence is something you can work at. Just like creativity, exercise is great. I've heard that cocaine is excellent as well. It has some side effects. Humor. So Cleese says humor and gets us into a creative mode quicker than anything else. Humor is an essential part of spontaneity and an essential part of creativity. Humor, if you're joking around, if it's okay to be silly, it's going to set the tone for what can be suggested and what won't be rejected. And that's, you don't want to be, that boosts confidence. Humor in itself, just the chemicals that are going through your mind, produce confidence and trust with other people. And humor also produces motivation. It's exciting when you're laughing for whatever reason. I did chat about this before in another talk. It's really complicated, but you will feel better when you're joking around, and it will also enable you to be more creative, think more divergently. Also, I have it on good authority from a local game developer that grating Monty Python DVDs into your cereal will induce a sense of humor. And you can put that into your game. It's point 15. And now, this is not John Cleese's wording, and he doesn't actually even say this. I'm saying this. Say fuck yes. Evan Greenwood suggests that when working with others, your acceptance and enthusiasm for their ideas boosts their confidence. And this is incredibly important. It's important that they're confident. And if you are always threatening to be the one that's going, no, that won't work. No, just a bad idea. No, you're a horrible person. They are going to not come to you with ideas, and you want to maximize the amount of ideas that are being thrown at you, well, within reason, and you also want them to feel good about it, because their best work is going to come from them feeling confident about their work. Also, if it really is a shit idea, you can ask questions about it, because there's a reason that they came up to you with this. They thought something was interesting here, or they thought you might laugh, and there's something behind that, even if the idea itself doesn't work for some reason. So rather than say, that's absolutely awful, Jared, say, that's awesome, and why? Like, why, what can we do? Can we do something with this? And hopefully, besides beating up Richard, that's most of what happens at Free Lives. It's a really nice place to work. Also, don't collaborate with negatons. So the converse is that you don't want to work with someone that's saying no, because that's shitty. You don't want to lack confidence in yourself. Also, they're going to be shutting down creativity in the rest of your team. So don't work with them. They're terrible. And so if you catch yourself being a negaton or someone else, tell them to shut up. And also, if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch Super Jail. It's wonderful. And this is my last point, although I'm not going to do a proper recap, but curiosity, all of this is great, but the quality of your ideas is going to be determined by the understanding of the subject that you're creating the ideas for. So you're not going to, if you're thinking divergently, you're not going to come up with useful ideas if you don't understand what the problem is you're trying to solve. But it's not good enough just to know your subject, because if you know your subject super well, you've got like a lot of references from the medium that you're already working in. You want to know things outside of your medium. You want to have hobbies or interests, or just have read a lot of Wikipedia articles. And that's going to enable you to bring things from outside your medium in and create things that are more novel or more interesting, or have just something to say about the world rather than a series of conventions that kind of tie together in an approximately enjoyable way. So be curious and learn things about the world. Ask people why they're interested in things if you think they're an idiot. Rather than telling them your ideas won't work. the nice thing about this is you can work on curiosity. If you research a particular subject, you're going to have information in it, you're going to have associations, and it's going to seem way more interesting to you after that. So this is another thing that you can kind of work at. Don't just, I guess, play video games, play life, play other things. And I guess it's like, I haven't ever watched an opera or been to a Miley Cyrus concert, but I'm going to make my very best effort to be curious about that. And that's my talk. Does anyone have any questions? I know I went through it super weird and fast.
I don't know if it's a question or more of an elaboration. So, I mean, John Cleese's model, it's brilliant. I've learned a lot from it as someone who is very convergent and who shoots down ideas. However, there's kind of a flip side to that, where they've done studies that brainstorming isn't necessarily effective, because what sometimes happens is you don't challenge people, you just accept all of their ideas. Sometimes by being challenged, it encourages you to come up with an even better idea. That's kind of what playtesting is about. People tell you your idea is shit by sucking hard at your game, and then that causes you to come up with more intelligent solutions. So I don't know where the balance is.
Well, I think there definitely is a balance. Now, I think I perhaps gave a bit of a one-sided story about the concept of divergent and convergent thinking. You need both. Like, being good at convergent, I'm sort of speaking from a perspective that most of us are pretty good at being able to work out whether something won't work. And you need to be able to do that. The point is suspending that until a useful time. And that might be 2 minutes from now, but following a possibility right now is more useful than immediately shutting it down. So you don't really want brainstorming. You want to. There is a purpose. Like, if you're making a video game, you're solving a specific problem most of the time, and you kind of can act a bit as like a debate moderator, and go, okay, but now the problem we were solving was, and then that's useful. But those ideas might be useful somewhere else. It's good to generate ideas in general, and I think vacillating between convergent and divergent thinking is going to help you maximize your creative, useful output. And also, then that's where it's not just about brainstorming. Sometimes it's just playfulness in the work you're doing. Your prototypes can be playful. The things you implement might be for a lull, but you actually discover something super interesting that's happening. And it's not just with other people, it's in your own work as well. Any more? Okay, thank you very much for listening. With great power comes great responsibility.